Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Junk Be Gone, Phoenix Conversions.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Sports Source. Happy Memorial Day weekend to you. Appreciate you joining us on a beautiful day. Hopefully you'll stay inside until about 12:30 and then go enjoy yourself and the rest of the holiday. We have a big show for you today. As you've heard, sports is right around the corner apparently. We'll get into that. Let me show you what all we're talking about today. First of all, as I said, SEC and Tennessee are reopening. We'll tell you more about that. What do players think about all this? Interesting poll this week with some results we'll show you. Crowd size at Neyland, what will it be? Who gets in? How do you do it? We got a recruiting update. Vols add more recruits again. And could what would appear to be a negative turn into a positive, an advantage for Jeremy Pruitt? I'll explain that later. Could it be an angry 2020 season with shades of 2015? Or is Tennessee ready to take a big jump forward? We'll talk Vol hoops. Where are they this year? And then best single season performance by a Vol that we have covered. That should be a packed show. And we'll start it in this first segment that is brought to you by our friends at Junk Be Gone. I had these folks at my home just a couple of weeks ago. I use their 15-yard driveway dumpster as I normally do. I fill it up, they haul it off. It's perfect, simple, easy, cost-effective, great. But I've also got a great big shed in my backyard that I don't think I've opened since 2007. So I was looking at it this week thinking, I need to have one of Junk Be Gone's two-man teams come out here, take that thing apart, and get rid of it. They can demolish things, they can remove things, whatever you need, they do it. Check them out, junkbegone.biz, great local company, Junk Be Gone. All right, welcome in the first two members of today's panel. We have right here from theathletic.com, we have David Ubben, and right down there, Vince Farrar from WNML AM and FM. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here today.
Thanks, John.
Appreciate it. As I said, good news for sports fans in terms of the psyche. Things are about to open up. The SEC is allowing its schools to bring athletes back on campus, football, men's basketball, women's basketball, on June 8th. That's only about a week later than usual for football, so no time lost for these voluntary type activities. Let's go ahead and tell you what Phillip Fulmer and the SEC had to say about it. I got to step to the monitor so I can read this tiny writing. This is Phillip Fulmer. Our staff and student athletes should be prepared for a new normal as we'll be implementing changes to how everyone accesses and uses our facilities. We plan to be extremely diligent in maintaining a healthy environment for our student athletes, coaches, and support staffs. In the coming days, we'll execute procedures enabling student athletes to return, with members of our football program being the first to arrive. We'll conduct screening leading up to the resumption of activities on June 8th. That's Phillip Fulmer, and here's what the statement from SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey said. While each institution will make its own decisions in creating defined plans to safely return student athletes to activity, it is essential to employ a collaborative approach that involves input from public health officials, coaches, sports medicine staff, sports performance personnel, and student athletes. Elements of the SEC's task force recommendations provided key guidance for determining the date of the return to activity. In addition to standard infection prevention measures as approved by public health authorities such as facility cleaning and social distancing, recommended enhanced health and safety measures include, here's what they're going to do, enhanced education of all team members on health and wellness best practices, including but not limited to preventing the spread of COVID-19, a 3-stage screening process that involves screening before student athletes arrive on campus, within 72 hours of entering athletic facilities, and on a daily basis upon resumption of athletic activities, testing of symptomatic team members, including student athletes, coaches, support staff, etc., immediate isolation of team members who are under investigation or diagnosed with COVID-19, followed by contact tracing, following CDC and local public health guidelines, and finally, a transition period that allows student athletes to gradually adapt to full training and sport activity following a period of inactivity. Gentlemen, we'll get into the list there in a second, but first of all, I really didn't think that we would be sitting here at this point, just a couple of months into this thing, saying, oh yeah, they're opening up in 2 weeks. I'm surprised that we are here. Hey, as a sports fan who wants sports back, on that part, I'm thrilled with it, but I'm kind of shocked that we are already here looking at June 8th.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've heard it, since this whole thing has kind of put pause on the entire sports world, is that the virus kind of determines the timeline. And you look around, especially in the South, you look at as things have reopened, we haven't seen a ton of numbers spiked. I think everyone's kind of cautiously dipping their toe into the water and hoping for the best here, and that's kind of all you can do at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's because there have been positive signs around the country, specifically in the South. There's obviously other areas that are hit harder, and there's still those conversations being had. But because we've seen that, and you're starting to see some sports be able to execute fanless events and pull those off without significant setbacks, I think that's encouraged the other leagues. I mean, Dana White for the UFC even mentioned, hey, all sports, states, they're all checking with me and asking how did we pull this off. So there have been a number of things that I think have encouraged people to get out and at least see if they can figure out a way to start the ball rolling towards a return. And it's also a reminder, hey, we shouldn't have made any big absolutes or definitive timetables like a lot of people were so willing to do one side or the other when this got going. You just never know how things are going to play out, and they'll probably still change moving forward now.
Well, you wonder where the SEC is, because if you remember Greg Sankey, when the NCAA shut down the championships for baseball and softball, he came out and said, I don't know why we're closing down June sports here in March. Right. Okay, now he's about to open up in the middle of June, which tells me, or early June, which tells me that he's thinking, yeah, we never should have killed everything back in March, because we might have had some sort of championship to play if the NCAA hadn't done that. At the same time, you're doing your best to try and stave off what no one understood at that point. It is a test to see where this is going. We'll talk about that in the next segment. How big of a dice roll is this for colleges and leagues? The biggest thing that stood out to me in that list is the fact that the SEC will be testing symptomatic players once they're on campus. We have heard repeatedly, the pro leagues are talking about we have to have testing available every day or at least a couple times a week for all of our players, symptomatic and asymptomatic. You've got numbers now. Most scientists believe that the number of cases that are asymptomatic is 35%. That's a pretty big chunk of people that are carriers of this thing and don't know they have it. Mm-hmm. Were you surprised that the SEC said, we're only going to get to symptomatic cases that we're going to test on a regular basis?
I mean, I think surprised, no, because I think it goes into the entire structure of college sports. We wrote about this at The Athletic this week as well, but players don't have a union, players don't have a voice. And when you look at the pro leagues who do, good luck finding a pro league where the players are willing to come back if you're only saying you're going to test symptomatic individuals. Now, every school is different. Some schools may go above and beyond that. But this is not we don't realize this is a problem thing. This is a budgetary thing. Mm-hmm. And it's tough for the schools to cry broke when, yes, they got a $44 million check from the SEC last year just for TV money. And so, why do schools not have a reserve for funds? It's because if there's no money there, then nobody's going to come sue them on the grounds of amateurism and this idea. If you don't have this reserve of funds, they get rid of those so that they don't have somebody to come after that money. And so when you don't have that, then you're having to live, quote unquote, paycheck to paycheck each year. And then when it comes to a time when you need that reserve, you don't have it. And now you're putting people at risk, because you could have a guy that is symptomatic ultimately, but he's still shedding the virus and he's asymptomatic for a couple days and infecting his teammates. It's tough to see that.
Yeah, testing for a professional team, you're talking anywhere from 25 players to 53 players. Let's say practice squad and backup, and let's say 70 at most. College football, you're talking 100 kids, maybe 110 when you throw in all the walk-ons. Mm-hmm. Then you throw in your other sports. That's just football. It's more expensive. It's a lot more expensive. And that is one of the reasons you're not seeing it, I think. Vince, your thoughts on that list? Anything stand out to you, or was that the key takeaway for you as well?
No, it was. I mean, first the term screening. You wonder, all right, what does that mean? That's not outlined as COVID-19 testing. It sounds like it's the temperature and it's some of those other type of tests, like you guys mentioned, that is for those that do have the symptoms, or just the general test that at least start the ball rolling towards figuring out, all right, maybe this is someone that if they do have a temperature, we need to maybe do further testing on. So I think that was the big key, is what do they mean in that? I don't know that they were really clear in that, other than that key word, and that's symptomatic. And yes, you're going to put some kids at risk, but a lot of sports returning is there's no absolutes in terms of the safety. There's some form of risk. It's just unfortunate for the college, the student athletes, like David mentioned, that they don't really have as much of a say in it. But I don't know that they would be there against it.
Well, we'll get to that.
Right.
We'll get to that a little later.
Right.
Vince Farrar, David Upman with us. Mike Strange joins us next on the Sports Source as we debate this topic, and that is, are they doing this based on knowledge, or are they doing this as a dice roll because they know what it would cost if they don't have football? We'll discuss the logistics of pulling this thing off. We'll get into the Tennessee season moving ahead. We'll talk basketball. A lot of stuff to come on the Sports Source. Come on back on the next segment.